I am a culinary anthropologist and a historian of food of the UPAEP Faculty of Gastronomy here in Puebla, Mexico. In this faculty, we have a research line about Mexican cuisines and Mexican gastronomical traditions, this topic that we are going to talk about today. I don't know how is the situation right now, the current situation in Italy, but we are still at home office here in Mexico, as I told you, Gabriel. And even we are physically separated, the idea of this online session is that we can participate together. Of course, I hope you and your loved ones, I mean your families and your friends, are safe and doing well in this difficult moment for everyone. Let me tell you that I have had the opportunity to work a little bit with some of the academic members of your university, like Daulo Soki, because, as maybe you know, we published together a couple of years ago this wonderful book. This is the Arc of Taste in Mexico, which compiles products knowledge and stories of the Mexican gastronomic heritage. This book presents a small sample of the richness of the country's food biodiversity, highlighting the risks that are leading to the erosion of this heritage and the work that different local and international actors are doing to safeguard and rescue it. This book also presents the results achieved over the years by the Arc of Taste project, thanks to the joint effort of your university, Slow Food, and Terra Madre Network, in collaboration, of course, with my university, UPAEP, and the Universidad Gastronómica de Querétaro here in Mexico as well. Now, what I'm going to do is to share my screen so that you can watch a video produced by the Conservatory for Mexican Gastronomic Culture while we talk about the Mexican traditional cuisines. So we are going to start this session, and please let me share. Let me share my. Let me share. Sorry. Let me share my.
I think it's on the bottom of the screen.
Yes, I know where is the bottom, but okay. Where I can't find is my video. Yeah, it's here, my video. Sorry. Here. No. Here now. Are you able to watch it? Yes.
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 Now, you are going to watch this video, these different images. Meanwhile, I'll talk about your Mexican cuisine. So I hope it's not going to be so boring for you. I hope so. So please feel free, if you have any question, please feel free to interrupt this session if you have any burning questions or something like that, or maybe you can write your questions in the chat window and someone can read them at the end of the session. What I really want is to help you to identify the eating patterns throughout Mexican history, as well as interpreting the food outcomes resulted from the cultural clash. Of course, we have such a limited time for this, but we are confident that by the end of the session, you will be able to appreciate the cultural influences in Mexican traditional cuisines and learn a little bit about Mexican culture through its gastronomy. I think all of you come from different disciplines, don't you? So we are going to start talking about some general concepts like the relationship among cuisine, gastronomy, culture, and tourism. As you know, Mexico is one of the world's region's richest in plant and animal diversity all over the world. This immense biological variety is due, among other reasons, to the topography, the variety of climes, and a long geological, biological, and cultural history. This natural diversity has made it possible for the inhabitants of the territory that we call Mexico today to have a rich and varied diet. it is sufficient to look at the current recipes books which mention the products needed to prepare a dish from different regions in the country to see our great variety of flora and fauna, cultivated and gathered plants, seasonal or perennial, animals that are fished for, hunted, collected, or raised. In 2010, Mexican traditional cuisine was declared an intangible cultural heritage of humanity by the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. Due to this inclusion of traditional Mexican cuisine to UNESCO's representative list, this culinary wealth is being considered as a tool for tourism, and it has the purpose to protect Mexican traditional cuisine. This was an unprecedented event, and it was significant because it presented the opportunity, not only in Mexico, but all over the world, to capitalize on heritage cuisine, and it served as a mechanism to promote cuisine on a global level, while at the same time represented the obligation to create policies for its preservation. Within these preservation efforts, tourism has been conceived as an effective tool for the evaluation of this Mexican traditional cuisine, which is seen as a tourist attraction and an economic source based on the resources and expertise of the country's principal regional cuisines. However, this tourism doesn't always integrate all the different social actors directly involved with cultural heritage cuisine, such as native people, traditional and also professional groups. On the contrary, the development of an elitist gastronomic tourism may be observed directed to global or world-class markets. That's why a goal for the use of traditional Mexican cuisines in tourism is to influence the preservation of biocultural heritage, social integration, and national economic growth. However, to achieve this, it is essential that public policy actions contemplate the social, economic, and environmental dimensions by means of efforts directed to the equitable management of the culinary heritage of Mexicans. It is quite important to say, first of all, that addressing the concept of cultural heritage involves two basic elements that we have to know. One hand, what stands out is the material or tangible nature of cultural heritage, while on the other, the intangible aspects of its cultural goods. In addition to its material footprint, cultural Mexican heritage involves traditions, of course, knowledge, systems of meanings, skills, rituals, ceremonials, religions, and symbolic form of expression, which as a whole constitute the testimonies of the process of Mexican civilization and exert a referential function for society. In addition to the economic importance of cultural Mexican heritage, its role as a result of humanity's future well-being stands out. This cultural heritage has today become a strategic resource for its guardians insofar that it responds to the consumption needs of the contemporary society. Mexican culinary tourism is situated within what has come to be called heritage tourism, or also we have called cultural heritage tourism, understood as a travel to sites of archaeological and historical importance, monuments, agricultural landscapes, and ethnic communities. This type of tourism involves the integration of material and also non-material cultural aspects of Mexican societies that serve as settings for tourist activities and as interpretive perspectives of the travel experience. These tourist activities related with food, not only in Mexico but all over the world, can play an important role in the conservation of cultural heritage through its economic revitalization, while also representing a key to open doors to other cultures. And this is so important. In this regard, some people have shown that tourism is positioned as a strategy for the evaluation of cultural heritage in the context of globalization. Paradoxically, however, tourist appropriation of heritage can lead to its commercialization and banalization. The use of cultural heritage for recreation is motivated by a desire of distinction, which is a marker of social status for the current patterns of tourist consumption. As a result, the analysis of heritage tourism centers on the place occupied by heritage objects as markers of identity in order to give meaning to the travel experience, since this type of tourism is distinguished by tourist interest in the cultures of the destinations they visit. Tourism can be thought of as a tool to legitimize heritage. In the case of Mexican food, tourism represents a platform to enhance its value and promote it as a regional market. The demand of cultural heritage tourism goods converts tourism into a practice that redefines its material and immaterial dimension as well, by way of assigning new values in connection to its ability to satisfy contemporary leisure activities. Mexican heritage cuisine contains a group of elements linked to food production, agriculture, and regional collective heritage since pre-Hispanic times, including agricultural and livestock products, how now, local dishes, and social norms for consumption. At the same time, traditional cuisines form part of heritage cuisine and refer to culinary systems that include autochthonous techniques, local systems of productions, traditions, beliefs, rituals, and social practices. But I have to tell you that this term cuisine is complex and is also confusing for so many people. First of all, because in the collective imagination, there is not a sufficiently clear distinction between the acceptance of cuisine as a physical space and a social or cultural constructed space. Secondly, because what is usually called cuisine refers more to the generic way of designating certain practices related to the preparation and consumption of food, while the cuisine's relationship with the culture and the traditions of the place from which it originated is very tenuous. The main problem when someone defines this term cuisine has to do with geographical and sociocultural criteria. And this happens not only in Mexico, but all over the world, as you can see in Italy as well. The former makes it impossible to talk about a Mexican national cuisine or a Mexican cuisine as a whole, since this is actually comprised of contributions from different regions that make up the country, which makes it possible and more appropriate to speak of regional cuisines, cultural gastronomical areas, or Mexican cuisines in plural. Currently in Mexico, we have 8 cultural gastronomical areas that were named from the cultural pre-Hispanic areas of Mesoamerica, Arid America, and also Oasis America. These 8 cultural gastronomical areas, you can find it in this book that we have talked about, the Art of Taste in Mexico. We have to remember that these cultural areas, these pre-Hispanic cultural areas, Mesoamerica, Aridoamerica, and Oasis America, mean different concepts cultural and archaeological scholars used to define a geographical space in which, down through the history of pre-Hispanic times, different societies shared cultural expressions and established a communication network. Then the current gastronomic cultural areas in Mexico that you can find in this book of The Art of Taste in Mexico are northeast, northwest, west, center, plateau, or like in Mexico we say it altiplano, Oaxaca, Gulf, and southeast. Each cultural gastronomical area has ingredients, dishes, drinks, products, tools, and knowledge that makes up its traditional cuisine, but all of them have had corn as an element of this shared history. For more than 10,000 years, the inhabitants of this territory that we know as Mexico today have improved and diversified its cultivation. Therefore, the term Mexican national cuisine or Mexican food is by definition broader and is usually associated with stereotypes and emblematic dishes, also drinks, such as meals such as tortillas, tacos, tamales, salsas, moles, pipianes, guisados, mezcal, and tequila. For example, while regional cuisine or cultural gastronomical area is a more specific term that allows more precise appreciation of the diversity of the biological and cultural factors that make up the cuisine's representative dishes. For these reasons, in Mexico and in the rest of the world, food and cuisine are not related with a unique country. It is better to say that they are from a specific cultural region. So instead of saying Mexican food or Mexican cuisine, we should try to say Mexican foods or Mexican cuisines in plural. And we have to be clear on this. On the other hand, some national cuisines came about thanks to the creation of cookbooks and recipes. And with the rules and practices that are essential for the continuity of a nation's food culture and systematically shaped, their value lies in that upon being documented. With certain historical weight, their contents were gradually transmitted from generation to generation and hence legitimized, thus constituting the traditions on how to prepare and consume food. In this way, recipe books reveal a rhetoric about the construction of a national cuisine which seeks to be a country's marker of distinction, revealing its personalized selection of the elements which act as identifying references. It's also important to say that recipe books do not make cuisines. Rather, cuisines are made by common social roots, or in other words, the food of the community or the food of a community. From the foregoing, it may be asserted that Mexican cuisines are based on a foundation of numerous sources, different sources. Some cuisines base their culinary model on pre-Hispanic legacies. Others are based on an emblematic dish prepared with local products. Like the mole poblano, that this is a dish that I am going to show you at the end of this talk with a video that here in the Faculty of Gastronomy at UPAEP we filmed for you. And others give a specific importance to their preparation techniques. Currently, the diversity of national, regional, and local cuisines in Mexico is being used commercially in various economically productive sectors, including tourism. The use of traditional cuisines in tourism illustrates the new ways that culinary heritage is being employed. We have to realize that gastronomy's incursion into tourism is part of a broader development strategy based on the conversion of local products into interchangeable capital as a function of local, regional, and international political agendas. One of the most significant trends in heritage tourism is the inclusion of traditional cuisine as a central element of the tourist experience. One example being the way in which heritage cuisine is used as a tool to promote a region. And it's happening right now in Mexico, but we have to pay attention on how we are doing this. In the past decades, for example, a variety of concepts that have emerged illustrating the various facets of the same phenomenon. Gastronomic tourism, food tourism, gourmet tourism, culinary tourism, taste tourism, and cuisine tourism. Beyond the particularities of each area of focus, the common denominator in all of these is the role of food heritage, I mean the cultural gastronomical tradition as an element for tourism. You can get a lot of researches about it, since studies of the motivations for tourist activity related to traditional food, the gastronomy's contribution to the formation of the image of tourist destinations, the use of local gastronomy in marketing strategies, the heritage cuisine in the local development, the use of local gastronomy for tourism, to the relationship between markets of quality and rural tourism. In Mexico, the different regional cuisines constitute actual tourist attractions in which they highlight the influence of regions' local gastronomy as an element to promote tourism. Of course, I am convinced that this is happening in Italy and in other countries as well. But specifically in Mexico, I think that some initiatives to promote gastronomy for tourism fail since they focus on dishes that represent only national culture and make emphasis of stereotypes like tacos, spicy food, and tequila, while the regional specialties or specialties are given little. Failure is also seen when slightly stylized versions of cuisine are presented that do not correspond with the Mexican traditional culinary expressions that we live day to day, of course, here in Mexico. This is the case of high Mexican cuisine or Mexican haute cuisine, and also with the Tex-Mex food, not Tex-Food Mex, Tex-Mex food. This last, although it arose in northern Mexico, this Tex-Mex food, and the southern United States, it is a type of food that is only consumed in this very specific geographical and cultural region since 50 or 60 years ago. Tex-Mex food dishes, I mean these burritos, chili con carne, and chili beans, they are not representative of the Mexican gastronomic traditions from all over the country. However, it is the best known Mexican cuisine all over the world. But it is quite important to realize that real Mexican traditional food is completely different from the Tex-Mex food, and that it would be quite difficult to find a restaurant who offers burritos and chili con carne in the center or in the south of Mexico. What I want to say, and what I would like to say, is that the transformation of cuisine into a tourism resource should occur with an appropriate balance between tradition and innovation, and this is quite important, between local knowledge associated with the cultural heritage of specific regions and the current uses of this cultural heritage. But it is a fact, the success of traditional cuisines with the tourism is related to the phenomenon of food standardization in a global world, an aspect that creates a desire to find authentic food at their places of origin. The urban consumption of emblematic dishes, meanwhile, represents a type of symbolic appropriation of food. Gastronomy is a highly valued element for tourists, and it enables tourists to experience sensations that are different from those found in everyday life. Likewise, Mexican traditional cuisines are important for tourism, since food consumption is a basic component in the basket of tourism goods, and food is an element for intercultural dialogue between hosts and visitors. Now let's talk about these Mexican traditional cuisines, which are composed of diverse ingredients, tools, knowledge, practices, beliefs, meanings, symbolisms, and identities. First of all, what you need to know is that these foundations, or the foundations of the Mexican contemporary culture, including its cuisines, can be placed in the pre-Hispanic world. But the cultural interaction that the diverse different regions of current Mexico enduring during these times of the viceroyalty of New Spain since 16th century generated an outstanding mix of flavors, ingredients, and also culinary techniques. The different cuisines of Mexico and their food ways represents heterogeneous and polyglot texts that have been adding new symbolic meanings from the time of their creation. This Mexican food as a whole created an ample repertoire of food preparation distributed throughout geographic and cultural regions all over the country. Since the pre-Hispanic time, the people who has been established in the territory that we call now Mexico has had its own cuisine made of three basic crops: corn, beans, and chili peppers. This trade of goods, along with other plant species such as squash, red tomato, green tomato, or tomatillo, amaranth, cacao, of course, vanilla, nopal cactus, and a great diversity of fruits and vegetables, as well as some species of animals like turkey, different kinds of birds, fishes, insects, and reptiles, formed part of the diet of the ancient Mesoamerican, Oasis America, and Aridoamerica pre-Hispanic cultures, such as Mayas and Aztecas or Aztecs. Although there were hundreds of pre-Hispanic cultures all over Mesoamerica, Aridoamerica, and Oasis America since 2,500 years before Christ. The supply of many of these food items was possible thanks to the development of agriculture and domestication, together with the preservation of practices such as hunting, fishing, and gathering. We have to mention the creation of cooking methods such as nixtamalization or nixtamalization, this culinary process in which corn is cooked in an alkaline water, a mixture of quicklime and water, which removes a thick membrane that covers the seed and assists the digestion of the seed. The resulted cooked corn is known as nixtamal, and it's used for making dough for tortillas, the principal ingredient for tacos, but also for prepared tamales, atoles, galletas, tortitas, memelas, gorditas, quesadillas, and much more of different delicious dishes and drinks. And the creation of the devices such as the Molcajete, that is a mortar made from volcanic rock that is used to grind numerous ingredients such as seeds, chilies, tomatoes, and spices for preparing a wide variety of sauces or salsas like moles and pipianes. The metate, a meaning stone also carved from volcanic rock, which is a long tilted device with 3 short legs used in such as different areas of Mexico for grinding the nixtamal, and also other ingredients like tomatoes and chilies. The olla de barro or crock pot to boil the beans with this most used aromatic herb in Mexican traditional cuisine that we call epazote, because it came from the Nahuatl epazot, and the comal, the circular clay plate to cook corn tortillas. All these words came also from this pre-Hispanic language that we call Nahuatl. That this was the language from the Aztec people. For example, Molcajete came from Molcajete, metate came from metatl, epazote came from epazotl, olla de barro, well, it came from Tecocuil of the Comet. It's quite different. And comal came from comali. Likewise, we must not forget the development of forms of commercial exchange, such as bartering, which played a decisive role in the foundation of the current traditional Mexican cuisines. When the Spaniards arrived in the 16th century to the territory that today is known as Mexico, a large number of peoples lived beyond what is known as Mesoamerica, or even Oasis America and Aridoamerica. To the north, south, and east, there were human settlements with different degrees of economic and social development. At this moment, initiated a process of culinary fusion between pre-Hispanic indigenous and European cultures. But it is important to mention that it was a process that it was influenced by cultures from Asia, Africa, and the Caribbean as well. In other words, the political and commercial globalization that brought together conquerors, merchants, and slaves from Europe, Africa, and Asia produced a racial, culinary, and linguistic fusion or mestizaje, what we say mestizaje. Spaniards with this Arabic heritage, Jews, and different groups that came as slaves from different parts of Africa and Asia, they all brought with them new products, new technical culinary process, cultural and social customs, crafted items, and other ways of explaining the world, other cosmogonies. During the 16th century, it was established the New Spain in this territory that today we know as Mexico. It's important to mention that it was not a Spaniard colony, but a viceroyalty of Spain, because they are quite different concepts. Very soon, the viceroyalty of New Spain developed a noteworthy culinary tradition, gaining fame and popularity thanks to the wealth of agricultural products, both plants and animals, and some products became important business for the producers and traders. The exploitation of abundant natural resources added to the import of foodstuff from overseas, and the commercial exchange, thanks to the Galleon of Manila, or now the China, fueled the development of commercial enterprises based on the main cities, such as Mexico City and Puebla, and in ports such as Veracruz and Acapulco, that supplied not only New Spain, but other regions as well. We need to add that this exchange and fusion of knowledge and traditions of diverse cultures that directly or indirectly became part of the culinary fabric of this society, with solid roots in foreign and local traditions. Then a significant variety of food resources were introduced during this exchange. For example, different types of domesticated livestock and poultry, enameled ceramics and lead, new textile fibers like wool and fine silk, iron, glass, a huge variety of spices, legumes, grains, fruits, vegetables, a large variety of cured meats and milk products, numerous techniques and tools for production and household use, among others. Likewise, the cultural gastronomic teachings given by Catholic evangelists were fundamental for the development of the different regional cuisines, because the kitchens of the monasteries and convents were considered as truly culinary laboratories, since they experimented with both indigenous and foreign products. The culinary development in these convents was directly related to the spaces in which they were established and served as research and experimentation centers, not only of cultivation and food waste development, but also in water management. Looking at conventual documentation, such as account ledgers, it's possible to understand the combination of ingredients, utensils, culinary and preservation techniques that gave birth to this mestizo cooking, or this fusion cooking. This cultural mix resulted into the gastronomic wealth of traditional Mexican cuisine that can be seen in the variety of nationally and internationally renowned dishes, drinks, and products. Despite the passing of the years since pre-Hispanic times, Mexican cuisines continues to be based on these three ingredients: corn, beans, and chili. During the pre-Hispanic era, corn was strongly related to religious ceremonies and practical rituals. Besides, it was consumed in such different ways, depending on the geographic region. But the most known was the dough for tortillas. Today, we just say tortillas, but there still are different types of these tortillas for social elite celebration, as well as in military wings or in the everyday diet. Corn was the holy food in Mesoamerica, because in pre-Hispanic times, people believed that gods had created the human being with corn dough. You can read, for example, the Popol Vuh, this cosmogonic story for Mayan people. And this is the real importance of corn in Mexico, since it's part of its cosmogony. Also, you can find the story of Olintonatio, for example, for Aztec people in the center of the country. Later, starting in the 19th century, the growing trade was enriched with the presence of immigrants from countries like France, Germany, England, Lebanon, China, and even Italy, among others, which gave rise to innovations in the way of eating, preparing, serving, and storing food. Although all these changes were less evident among the indigenous people and rural areas, in urban and mestizo areas, the transformation was much greater, given that in Mexico, the mix of the different groups took place in all spheres of life. From this mix of cultures also arose an infinite number of utensils and culinary techniques adapted to the uses and fashions of each era. Many of them have even lasted for hundreds of years because of their usefulness and beauty, and because they are part of the identity of a region or a community or a specific social group. We must remember that the culture of a people, community, region, or country also includes the way that inhabitants recognize each other as a part of a group, whether indigenous or mestizo, from the countryside or the city. For example, just like with gastronomy, many of the transformations in folk art associated with the cuisine came about because of regional differences between this difference. For example, pottery is quite different at the north of the country than at the center or at the south. Then gastronomy is undoubtedly an element for establishing identity in which the vast majority of Mexicans recognize themselves, as are all the tools and utensils used for cooking, storing, transporting, and serving food. Today, for example, it's not unusual to find one of these volcanic rock mortar and pestle like the metate and molcajete next to a modern blender in a Mexican kitchen, whether in the city or the countryside, or clay pots next to the pewter of Teflon. Hot chocolate, for example, continues to be hand-beaten with turned wood and whisk, and millions of Mexicans drink coffee or other hot beverage in clay mugs. Of course, as I mentioned before, these practices are all intimately linked to the country's different cultural regions. And here we can answer the question that so many people have asked me so many different times. Why, beyond the ritual or festive aspects of certain customs, an anthropologist and a historian like you would be interested in the way food is produced, prepared, and served? Well, this interest is born of a broader definition of what culture is and how different peoples have dealt with the effects of globalization. This definition includes the way in which inhabitants in Mexico, for example, resolve their day-to-day problems, how they pursue their food they need to eat, how they build their homes, use the environment, dress, and communicate among each other. And of course, it involves their inner world, the spiritual world, the way they explain the origin of the cosmos, the way they explain the origin of the world, the origin of the humankind, the relationship with nature, and also their art. The appropriation of products, techniques, and ways of preparing and serving food has made Mexico's gastronomy a lively and dynamic manifestation of this culture. Mexican traditional cuisines are considered patrimony of the humankind because they are made up of a series of original and imported products that, with the passage of processes carried out to transform and use the raw materials, like nixtamalización, or using the cacao bean in different dishes, like in mole, techniques for preparing food, like those used to make tortillas, to wrap tamales, to preserve certain meats, among others, rituals like ceremonies, to pray for a good crop, objects, utensils, tools, and oral stories through which knowledge and wisdom has been transmitted. In conclusion, Mexican traditional cuisines, all of them has originality, diversity, historical continuity, authenticity, and identity. That is why Mexican cuisines are part of the country's cultural patrimony, and it was declared intangible cultural heritage monument, because all the elements that we inherit from our grandmothers have family value as a heritage, but also reproduce the forms of preparations and flavors that are close to us and our surroundings with a profound cultural symbolism. This identity that we have with our traditional cuisines accompany us in all spheres of life, and it is our responsibility to preserve them. So now, I think we have 10 more minutes. I think so. I don't know, Gabriel?
Sure.
Because I want to show you this video that chefs in our faculty filmed for you. I hope it's possible to share with you. Ventana de la compartir audio. Let me. Just a minute, please. Sorry. Mole, 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 mole. Hope so we can.
In the meanwhile, for students who wants to address you a question or wants to comment, please write on the chat, and then we will get back and open the floor. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. If we don't have enough time for responding the answers right now, you, Gabriel, you can send me by email, and I can answer the questions by email.
As you want, yes, but I think that perhaps someone will write here in chat, and if you want, if you have time, you can reply directly here. But yes, of course.
Yes, maybe. Do you think it's possible that I connect with another computer?
I have a question. Is now the right time, or should we wait until after the video?
Just give me just a couple of minutes, please.
Sure.
Yes, sorry. Moni and do you have the video of Mole in your computers right now? Maybe because I just want to share with you. Yes, it's opening now, right now.
Sure.
They have the ground part here. Sorry.
Don't worry. Don't worry. Ali, in the meanwhile, if you want to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, Ali, if you want to ask the question.
Yes, sure.
Ali?
Yes,
Yeah, sure. Yeah. My question, I was just wondering about kind of the relationship with Guatemala, or kind of how either indigenous people in Guatemala or the cuisine of Guatemala is maybe negatively affected by, as you were saying, the nationalism around identifying Mexican cuisine uniquely, even though in pre-Columbian times there was much more fluidity between the border of Guatemala and southern Mexico.
No, it doesn't work.
Paola? Yes?
I tried to make it function, but it doesn't work.
Okay, okay.
Oh, just please, I'm going to answer you, Ari. Just give me a couple of seconds to tell something to Nayeli and Monica. Please, Monica and Nayeli, do you have our video about the mole in your computer? So we can share it with them. Because in my computer, I cannot, I don't know how, but I cannot share it with them.
If you want to send me, but yeah.
I can share the, how do you say, the Google Drive link?
If you want, yes.
Yeah, I want to share.
Email.
Sure. Gabriel. Video mole. Okay. So, aquí, share. Gabriel Broglio.
Sí.
Now I have shared to you.
Okay, wait.
It's a link of Google Drive.
Yes.
So, Pao, I'm crazy, I'm Pao. Naye, if you have the video, please could you share your screen with us?
Yes, just a moment that I'm opening the video.
Okay, so good. So Ari, sorry, Ari, I beg your pardon. Ari, you told me, or you asked me, if I think that the Guatemala cuisine, something like that. Sorry. Could you please tell me again?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I know a lot was going on. Thank you. My question was, do you see any negative impacts on either the cuisine of Guatemala or even the indigenous cuisine of Guatemala because of the relative strength and power of the Mexican national cuisine, and kind of maybe how these modern ideas of nationalism actually sometimes hurt what, you know, places where borders did not used to exist.
Yeah.
The divides were not the same.
Well, I think this is why it's quite important to say that the gastronomy, it has related to a cultural area more than a country. For example, if you say the south of Mexico, the gastronomy of the south of Mexico is much more similar to Guatemala cuisine than the north of Mexico, because at the north of Mexico you can find this Tex-Mex food that it's quite similar to the south of the United States. So, of course, it's like a delicate theme, not only for gastronomy, for different aspects of culture between Mexico and Guatemala, but not only Guatemala, also with Honduras, Belize, and these countries that culturally they are quite similar to the south of Mexico, because they were part of a unique cultural area that it was the southeast of Mesoamerica area. So if you see, or if you see the gastronomy of Chiapas, Tabasco, and these states of the south of Mexico, the gastronomy is quite similar to Guatemalan food. So it is better to say that's why it is better to say not Mexican cuisine as a whole, this cuisine exclusively for Mexican as a nation. No, we have different cuisines. We have different cuisines depending on the cultural area, and we have 8 areas of 8. Like you can see here, we have 8 cultural gastronomical areas, and as you can see, this is one type of gastronomical area, the south of Mexico, and this gastronomy is quite similar to the gastronomy of Guatemala or even Honduras. No? So it's important. I think this is why important, because I teach a class here in Mexico, and this class, it says, yes, this class, it's called Mexican Cultural Tradition. Right? Like it's about the gastronomy is about culture. It's not about a country. It's not about a geographic limited area. It's about a culture, and all the cultural areas. It depends, of course, of the cultural characteristics. It's the same, for example, like in Mesopotamia, as you know, no? It's the same Mesoamerica, Arid America, and Oasis America. And we have to say to the people of Guatemala that we have, of course, we are brothers, and we have such many similarities with gastronomy, idiom, language. For example, if you heard people talking at the south of Mexico, it sounds more like a Guatemalan people than a person, for example, at the north in Mexico. Chiara is...
Yes, Chiara, if you want to...
Thank you.
Open your mic.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you so much.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. I have a question about the impact of coronavirus in the community of Mexican people, such as if, for example, people meet all together to cook, which COVID-19 wasn't possible, and it changed a lot the sense of community. This was my question.
Beg your pardon, I don't understand your question. You say that the impact of the coronavirus right now in
Yes.
the way of
If in the way of the community where people, for example, they cook together before COVID-19, they could meet and cook together, prepare food and eat all together. Meanwhile, for example, now if this is true or not so much, because for example, in some areas of Italy, it was like that. Many people met together before there were 20 or more during Christmas holidays, and right now they couldn't.
Yeah, I think the principal problem or the principal impact of coronavirus here in Mexico, it has been in terms of economic and commercial and commercial aspects. Because, for example, for families, I think it was the opposite because we have to stay at home, so we have been in families more than ever. And our communities has been closed because of this situation. But of course, there has been a lot of impact in commercial aspects, like all the cooks, all the chefs that have to close their restaurants, their places. They are in crisis, and a crazy crisis right now. It has been terrible for all of them. But for people in communities, I think coronavirus is not affecting us. On the contrary, because we are still having our meals in family, and more than ever, because now we are working at home office. And for example, me, I have been the last year here in the house of my mom, and I am eating every day with my mom. But before the coronavirus, I have to take my meals at the university every day, and I only see my mom every weekend for meeting. For meals. I don't know if I answered your question. Sorry.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Sorry.
Thank you, Chiara. Thank you, Chiara.
Again, you have to like the video.
Yes, there's another question. I share. Yeah,
Well,
wait.
okay.
I try to share my video.
Because I think you're going to like it, because you can see how is one of the most representative dishes of Mexican traditional food.
Yeah.
This food, it has so many cultural.
Oh.
that's a usually that showed one of our traditional dishes, and as you can see, all in one dish, it has so many different ingredients from all over the world. This is the result of all the cultural influences that Mexican cuisines have received through the years.
Thank
So
you so
thank you.
much. Thank you so much for your talk, also for sharing this video. I don't know if there are other questions. We have time, yes, for one question, and then we have to close. But yes, please.
Yeah, I'll, hello,
Oh,
and thank you for the presentation. I just have one quick question. You spoke about Tex-Mex cuisine and how it is it is nothing like Mexican cuisine. And I actually recently read about this too, so I wanted to ask you about that. So any kind of, let's say, culinary appropriation that also happens kind of does stem from a certain amount of familiarity to the cuisine itself. I mean, even if we take the example of India, um, there's a there is like a few things that have traveled across continents as Indian cuisine, which are still a part of Indian cuisine, if not Indian cuisine in its entirety. But how does it happen that something like Tex-Mex, except for I think quesadillas, nothing is even remotely familiar to Mexican cuisine. So, um, um, can you like tell me a little bit about even like geographically traveling, across the border? How did it become Mexican cuisine? Even if it's like nothing like Mexican cuisine.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry because I don't know if I understand completely because the sounds it's like it's cutting, but
Oh.
I'm going to tell you something about Tex-Mex food. Well, this Tex-Mex food, of course, is not the traditional Mexican cuisine. It's, but it is one of the Mexican cuisines, and we have to realize that, and we have to recognize it. Is this cuisine that we can find it in the north of Mexico and also at the south of the United States. Of course, it's not a traditional Mexican cuisine, but it's one of the current cuisines. And it has some certain elements of Mexican traditional cuisines, like the use of beans, the use of corn, the use of chili. But the culinary techniques and the process and and all these elements of the cuisine, they are contemporary elements that we can find it since 50 or 60 years ago. And even it's not the traditional Mexican cuisine, it is the most known all over the world because of the influence of the United States, of course, and because of the, this, I don't know how to say, but this boom that Hollywood can do it through the movies, and also because you can get it all over the world at the cinemas, for example, with the nachos, with the cartoons like Speedy Gonzales or something like this. This is part of this culture of Tex-Mex food, and also with all this specific culture that it has been emerging from the south of the US and the north of Mexican. And we don't have to make it less than other cultures because it's an own culture it has their own characteristics and their own particularities. And it has been emerging from immigrant people, from Mexican people in the south of the United States. And they have a specific language like this Spanglish that they speak with some words in Spanish, some words in English, but the grammar is a little bit in Spanish and a little bit in English. For example, you can say, vamos a aparcar la troca, that we are going to park in the truck. So we don't say in English, we don't say it in Spanish, but vamos a aparcar la troca. So you have to know something about, a little bit of English, a little bit of Spanish. But do we have to say that this is not a culture and that this is the worst thing that it's happening? I don't think so. I think that these people, these migrant people, that they are living in the south of the United States, in the north of Mexico, they are living a process of acculturation. This is a humanity, and we are human beings, we are dynamics, and this is life. Yeah. And gastronomy is life. It's life. So Tex-Mex food, of course, just we have to be honest and say, of course, okay, Tex-Mex food is not a traditional Mexican food, but it's a type of current traditional, it's a type of current Mexican cuisines. And you can find it in the north of Mexico. And of course, it's the most known in all over the places, but chili con carne and chili with beans or nachos and burritos. This is not traditional food, but it's a type of Mexican food that you can only find in the north of Mexico because of the immigrant population and also in the south of the United States. But it's a normal thing, I think so.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you so much for this question and for the reply. I really agree with you, Paola Vera, about the question of migration, which is reshaping gastronomy and general cuisine. And for instance, one reflection was about how the work by Anzaldúa on the Frontera can be important also for rethinking the movement of people and reshape of gastronomy or recipes or contamination and ways of eating or cooking between US and Mexico. But my question for you is about another thing, is about if there is a sort of difference between the west and east coast of Mexico in terms of colonization and contacts or ways of cooking and gastronomies.
I think the most important difference is between the pre-Hispanic cultural areas and the colonization of these different cultural areas. Because in pre-Hispanic times, we have this Mesoamerica and Oasis America in the north of Mexico, of the territory that we know as Mexico today. And Mesoamerica, it's from Sinaloa and Tamaulipas in the center of Mexico to Honduras. This is Mesoamerica. And Mesoamerican cultures, they have a characteristic quite important, that they were agricultural communities. In Oasis America and Untitled America, they didn't have the agriculture as a technique that they use it for acquiring their food. So this is quite different, because the colonization in Mesoamerica, it was completely different than the colonization on Oasis America and Untitled America. And of course, it was completely different, the colonization of American tribes or American indigenous people in the territory that we know today as United States and Canada. So, of course, it's different type of food that you can find in the east and in the west of Mexico, because of the type of fish, for example, that you can find it. But not is the difference is not about the base of alimentation.
Yeah.
Because the principal difference is if they had agricultural process or they didn't have agricultural process.
Okay.
So in the north of Mexico, in pre-Hispanic times, there was no agriculture, like a complex system, like in the center and the south, that they had corn, chili, and bean as the center of the basic foods.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Vera.
It's more important to see the differences between north and south than east and west. And just to make it, this conclusion is, of course, we have to remember that all of us, all over the country, all over the world, we are the result of a combination of fusions of cultures, and all our cultures and all our gastronomies are quite different. Like, we are not the same right now that 10 years before or 100 years
Sure.
before. You can see, for example, tell me, how would be the Italian food without our tomato? Or wonderful tomato that America give it to you.
Yeah.
This delicious Italian food, it would be completely different without tomato, for example.
Yeah, such as pizza or spaghetti or other stuff like that. It's for this that talking about the traditional in terms of Italian modern food is very difficult because, or in general for Europe or European countries, there's a close connection between colonizations, the first in the Americas and after in the 19th century, and different ingredients which reshaped recipes and other ways of cooking.
And this is quite interesting, right?
Yeah. Paola, Vera, thank you so much, and thank you for this talk and for staying with us and replying to all questions. And I hope we will have time to be in dialogue also on this topic and on the Mexican cuisine. And thank you also to all students for being with us. And thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to all. And you know, you have home here in Mexico, as we say. You have the UPAEP in Puebla, Mexico. I hope we end this situation, this terrible situation all over the world, and soon, and we can travel to Italy, and you can travel to Mexico and visit us.
That's fine. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you later.
Bye. Bye.